everybody. Happy Sunday. I'm here to talk about Kendamil Formula. So I've already talked about this last month, but I did not realize that my child had knocked my microphone onto the ground. And so the audio was just apparently unmanageable, as many people told me. Sorry. So today I'm going to go over some of the highlights again of everything you wanted to know about the new European formula craze, which is Kendamil Formula, which is actually a British formula. So I'm going to be talking about that, and I will also give you at the end a comparison with similar-ish formulas on the European market, which would be Loulouka and Holle Pre. So I'll try to get to this as quickly as possible. It's like a cozy, rainy Sunday here, and I have like the smallest chance of being able to read a little bit of my book before my youngest wakes up from his nap. Fingers crossed for me. Okay, so before I even begin talking about it at all, you know I'm going to give you the spiel. Kendamil Formula is a European formula. It is not regulated by the FDA because the FDA only regulates American formulas. So I'm going to break down all the nutrition facts for you, but if you are considering a European formula, you must speak with your pediatrician. There are risks from importing a formula that's not regulated by the UFDA, the US FDA. Like, are you going to find out about a recall? How is the formula stored during import? I have an article on my website, babyformulaexpert.com, that goes through all the components I think you should just take into your decision making. So I'm not going to discuss any of that anymore. I'm just going to be talking about ingredients because I've had a lot of questions, and it is kind of like the newest craze. And I've seen a lot of stuff on social media that inspires FOMO, that like you're not using this formula and you should never have fear of anything when feeding your baby, ever. So let me give you some facts. You can take those facts to your pediatrician if it sounds reasonable, and then you guys go from there. So, Kendamil is not a new formula at all. It's kind of new on the US market, but it's been produced and sold in Britain and Europe for decades. It's a really old company. Their big marketing claim over there is that Prince Louis, Kate Middleton's son, uses Kendamil Formula. And I said this in my last video, and I'm going to say it again here. Kate, if you're watching this, I think we would be really, really good friends. DM me. We can have a wine Zoom date and talk about our kids and fashion. It would be a lot of fun, I promise. Okay, but back to the formula. While it is adorable that Prince Louis uses this formula, you should never choose the formula because another baby uses it. That baby's not your baby. Like, I don't blame them for marketing that way. But let me tell you some ingredient facts, and that should help you or deter you from using a formula. That's the only reason you should make a formula decision. So first of all, what makes Kendamil different and why is it getting kind of hype? The really big difference is it is a full fat formula from organically grass-fed raised cows. So full fat meaning they use the whole milk from the cow as the base of the formula, as opposed to skimming the milk, so you're really just using the protein. Every single formula in the United States skims the milk, and then is mostly providing a protein and lactose source. So you're not getting any of cream, no fat from the cow's milk. So that's a very big difference. And I'm going to talk about why right now. One of the most important things when you're using, if you're going to use a full fat cow's milk base, is that the cows are very well cared for, and then, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, and that they're also fed grass and allowed to range and graze and that kind of thing. Basically, they're treated really and fed really, really well. And that is because you get benefits from providing grass-fed diet to cows, and those benefits are almost all found in the fat. So this applies to beef as well. So when you have grass-fed cows, you get a natural increase in concentration of some of the nutrients in the milk, some of the vitamins and minerals. You get an increase in the omega-3 fatty acids, kind of the healthy fatty acids we think about in the fat itself. And that also goes for fat in beef as a side note. So that's really, so a lot of the benefits of feeding grass are found in the milk. So I kind of, I think it kind of makes me laugh when I see grass-fed skim milk. I'm like, oh, but you took away some of the best stuff. There's fat-soluble vitamins in the fat. So all the fat-soluble vitamins are going to be in the fat-soluble part. So if you're using The cream, that's just less of those vitamins you need to add back into the formula because they're already there. So less shaker vitamin that you have to put into the formula if you're able to use the fat component. Um, let's see, what else do I have on my list? Oh, yeah, there's other things in the fat that are very healthy for human infants we know. So, for example, cholesterol. Cholesterol is only found in fat from animals. Breast milk is full of cholesterol. Breastfed babies are on a high cholesterol diet. Obviously, there's no cholesterol if we're using no fat from the animal, but if you use full fat, you do get some cholesterol, which for an infant is a positive thing. You also get other healthy things that are in fat, like milk fat globule membrane from the title. That's a mouth turner. Hard to say, milk fat globule membrane. It's part of the milk fat. It's actually phospholipids or proteins attached to fat that have really positive benefits for the infant's immune system and cognitive development. This is the really sexy ingredient that's in Enfamil Inspire, the milk fat globule membrane. So they have a lot of research about it, so they add it back in. They extract milk fat globule membrane from cow's fat or from cow's milk, and they add it back to their formula. If you're just using the whole milk to begin with, you're going to have some of that in there anyway. I have no idea how the concentration would compare to an extracted version added, like Inspire, but you will get some, which is a great positive thing. There's also healthy, unique fatty acids in cow's milk fat that have proven to have health benefits for humans that, of course, you only get if you're providing fat. The other thing that fat provides is flavor. So butter is delicious. I put heavy whipping cream in my coffee, and it's the best decision I've ever made. It's so good. Fat tastes really, really good. This isn't the biggest selling point for me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love all our infants to be able to really enjoy the experience of their feeds. But as a nutritionist, we're usually really focused on just keeping them healthy and growing. A lot of babies need really foul tasting formulas, and they need those because they have an allergy. And I'm always like, they're fine. They'll get over it. Don't worry if it tastes terrible. But if it can taste good, great. And I have tried the Kendamil formula, and it does taste creamy and delicious, and has a nice creamy feel to it. So those are all really positive things that come along with using a full fat formula. Now, a lot of those things, like I said, it's really important to me that it be from a healthy grass-fed cow, because the grass-fed part provides some of those benefits. The other thing is, if you use full fat from a non-healthy cow, a cow that maybe doesn't get to exercise, is sick a lot, has antibiotics and growth hormones, those cows may have negative things leak into their fat. So a lot of pesticides are also fat soluble, so you can get toxins and pesticides and other just negative things that can also come along with providing full fat. So it's very important, again, personal opinion, that when you're using a full fat base, you're having it from cows that have basically a really nice life. And these cows they graze out in this beautiful area of England that I would love to travel to someday. With homeschooling and COVID and all of that going on here, I honestly think these cows have less stress and a better life than me. But that's temporary. We're all going to make it through this. So that's kind of the big selling point, if you will, or the big differentiator of Kendamil formula, that they have this. It's organic, or they have organic versions that you can get that are also from grass-fed cows, and they use the full fat base. So I want to go through the other components of the formula, the protein and the carbohydrate. That'll do a little comparison for you with other formulas that are sort of similar. So for the rest of the fat, they can't just use cow's milk. Cow's milk is not as fat as human breast milk, so you have to add more fat back. So you do that with vegetable oils. So they use sunflower oil, coconut oil, and rapeseed oil, which is a version of canola oil. So you'll notice there's no soy oil and there's no palm oil. This is also a big differentiator. So a lot of people are trying to avoid palm oil, especially if constipation is a chronic issue for your sweet one. Palm oil is something you may want to avoid. And then lots of people are, just for personal reasons, attempting to avoid soy in their products. And so if you are, this hits both of those. It's very unusual to find a formula that is both soy oil and palm oil free, and we don't have any in the US. So Kendamil does fall into that category. So when you are using cow's milk cream as part of the fat, fat. Because it's unusual, I kind of had some concerns at first and did a little math about using a very different fat source. So two things I was wondering about were the saturated fat and the cholesterol. So as I mentioned, there's really no cholesterol in formulas that don't use any animal-based fat, so they don't have any. Obviously, we know babies grow really well doing that. Human milk has a lot of cholesterol, but I just to roughly compare, the amount of cholesterol in Kendamil Formula is 2.2 milligrams per 100 milliliters, and human milk is around, very variable as human milk is, anywhere between 4 and 16 milligrams per 100 milliliters. So the amount of cholesterol in the Kendamil formula isn't even as much as the low end of cholesterol in breast milk, which actually made me feel fine, because you have breast milk is one thing, but formulas that we have were made of just vegetable oils also grow very healthy babies. It's perfectly fine to use. So falling in the middle there with the cholesterol actually makes me feel very comfortable. You're like, okay, we're in the range of where we know babies thrive and grow really well, either breastfed or formula fed. Similarly, thinking about saturated fat. So cow's milk will provide some saturated fat. They use a relatively high amount of coconut oil because they're not using palm oil. That has a lot of saturated fatty acids, and so I was wondering how much saturated fat it was. And it's right similarly on par with the kind of low end of the range of what's normal in breast milk. So Kendamil has 34% of the fat is from saturated fatty acids. Human milk, again, you'll always have a big range in human milk because it's made by individual moms, ranging anywhere from 39 to 47%. Kendamil coming in at about 34% saturated fat. So again, not even coming up to where we think of as normal for breast milk, but that made me feel very comfortable. So it's going to be higher than your average US-based formula, but lower than breast milk. So again, within the range where we know this is a very safe range for infant consumption. And we mentioned about no palm oil and no soy oil. So the other thing, which usually when I review a formula, I start off with the protein, because the protein, if your baby has a bad reaction to a formula, it's most likely the protein. But we start with fat today because that's the big differentiator for Kendamil. So their protein is pretty standard. It is an intact protein formula. So despite what anybody tells you on social media, if your baby has an allergy, this is not a good choice. The intact proteins mean it's the large size protein. If your baby's been diagnosed with a cow's milk allergy, it's full of intact cow's milk proteins, and we would not want to risk your baby having a reaction. So that's, cow's milk allergies are, it's not most babies. We'll just leave it there. And you would be working with your doctor closely. So it's an intact protein formula, and they have stage 1 and stage 2. Remember, Europe stages their formula and the US does not. Stage 1 of the Kendamil is 60% whey, 40% casein, which is around where breast milk is. That's kind of the normalish target you'll see formula companies reach for when they're trying to replicate the whey casein ratio for breast milk, is 60% whey. So they do that for stage 1. And then in stage 2, it's reduced a little bit. It's 50-50. 50% whey, 50% casein. As the baby's older, and at the end of stage 2, if they want transitioning to just whole milk. And plain whole milk just out of the cow is 80% casein. So it's kind of a big jump. So if you're starting off with stage 1, it's at 60% whey, 40% casein, which is a great place to start if you're starting formula for the very first time. The carbohydrate this time is super easy, 100% lactose, both in stage 1 and stage 2. So again, if you're starting formula for the very first time and you have no inclination of how your baby may digest one versus the other, and your baby's healthy and term, we usually recommend starting with 100% lactose. That's the carbohydrate in breast milk, and so this is the carbohydrate that they use in both the stage 1 and stage 2, which is fantastic if that's where you are and you don't need a lactose-reduced formula. Those are the big ones: fat, protein, and carbohydrate. The other thing I will mention is they do add a prebiotic. So Kendamil adds a prebiotic, which is food for healthy bacteria. They use galacto-oligosaccharides, which is a super standard, super common prebiotic that a lot of different formulas use. There's no probiotic, so no live bacteria. It's great. I feel great about it. You can add probiotics at home. I'm always much more concerned with the major ingredients, which are much more likely to allow your baby to digest comfortably or be the source of a problem. All the sexy extras are fantastic. They're sexy and extra, but I really do consider them extra. I mean, I and all the regulators, they're not required. So it's nice that they're there, but it's not like having or not having galacto-oligosaccharides would never be a reason I would recommend to an individual baby one product versus the other. I would want to focus on the major ingredients. But they do have it, and that separates them from some other formulas on the market. The other thing that I don't normally discuss with US formulas, but it's very important with European formulas, is the iron content. So European formulas in general tend to have lower iron concentrations than American formulas. This is it's just something you really need to be aware of. It's one of the reasons a lot of US pediatricians are wary of European formulas. They're concerned about not having enough iron or inadvertently some European formulas, if sold in as the recipe in the US, would have to have a big label on the can saying low iron, supplemental iron would be needed. So there's a really big difference in regulation of iron levels between how the US handles formula and how the EU handles formula. So I wanted to bring that up so you know if you're going to have a discussion with your pediatrician what the levels are. So in stage 1 for the Kendamil formula, it's 1.1 milligrams per 100 calories. I know that doesn't mean anything to you. They have clearly taken a stance that's going to make pediatricians in the US, well, I don't know if this is why they did it, but it will, a little more comfortable. So if you are less than 1 milligram per 100 kcals, and they're at 1.1, which is actually a bigger difference, then you have to have that label saying supplemental iron will be needed. So most pediatricians in my experience want to see a minimum of 1.0, and this is 1.1 in stage 1, and it goes up to 1.2 in stage 2. This is in contrast to some of the low iron formulas or lower iron formulas in the EU have around 0.5 milligrams, so half of that. And those are some of the ones that make some US pediatricians uncomfortable, and that will depend on your baby. Was your baby born premature? If you were the biological mother, were you anemic during pregnancy? Did you have delayed cord clamping? Like, your pediatrician knows all these things about you and your baby that will affect your baby's iron status and will matter to them whether or not they care about iron and formula. So they will. Sometimes they won't, other times. But if you're going to have the European formula discussion with your pediatrician, be prepared to talk about the iron, and then just know, and it's there, and it's not something you have to worry about. So the punchline is Kendamil has an iron level that is similar to some US formulas. So it's not that very low level. Okay, we're cruising. I wanted to do a little comparison between Loulouka and Holle Pre. And actually, my last video, I did a comparison to Loulouka, and one of you awesome moms wrote a note in the comments that I think Loulouka changed their recipe, and they did, and I had no idea. So I wanted to also do an update and give you some more accurate information. So Loulouka is also a newish formula, even in the European market, and they also just were able to distribute it somehow in the US at the same time. So their big claim to fame was grass-fed whole milk in the formula, which was really unusual to even hit the US market. But they changed their recipe to use skim milk. Again, I have no idea why. I would never have known about it unless one of you awesome moms dropped me a comment. But so Loulouka really is no longer that similar to Kendamil. Loulouka does still avoid palm oil and avoid soy oil in their fat blend. So in that sense, they're similar, but they are now using skim milk and adding all vegetable oils, which again is how all US formulas make their formula. But if you were really wanting a whole milk-based formula, your choices were Loulouka or Kendamil or Holle Pre. So just again to focus on the Loulouka really briefly, they are no longer, if you go to their website, they are no longer using a whole milk base, which is really different than how they originally came out. And also, sorry, the inaccurate information I put in my last video. And I just mentioned the only other formula that I am familiar with that uses a whole milk base is Holle Pre. So their Pre formula uses whole milk, and then still, of course, has to add vegetable oils back in, and they do include palm oil in their recipe. So they are whole milk based, they have grass-fed cows, they have the same wonderful, healthy, happy cows. So the differences are they use palm oil as one of their vegetable oils in the Holle Pre, and I wrote it down. And they're a very low iron formula. Let me just find where it is. Holle Pre is one of those that has 0.5 milligrams per 100 calories of iron in their formula. Kendamil has 1.1 milligrams per 100 calories. Every pediatrician is different, so ask yours, but most of the pediatricians I have interacted with hover around the 1.0 is their comfort level. If it's below 1.0, they want to have a really good explanation, reason, etc. If it's above 1.0, they're usually like, okay, great, fine. So that's going to be a big difference, and it should be a really big concern of yours as well, thinking about your baby. Does your baby have risk factors for iron deficiency? Are you feeding formula because you want a little more iron? The Holle Pre is not a good choice because it's so low in iron. So just individual things to think about when having the talk with your pediatrician and making the decision. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to cover. I felt just terrible, that I had information in the about Loulouka in the last video, and that my toddler knocked the microphone on the floor, and so the recorded version was just completely inaudible. It was so terrible. I put it up for a while. I was like, whatever, I'm not gonna record it. But then I did listen to it. I was like, oh, this is real bad. So I hope this is helpful. Mostly what I hope is, I hope none of you watching ever feel FOMO about feeding. If your baby is thriving and you're feeding formula, whatever formula you're using is the perfect formula. Don't just because someone else is using something different or new formula fits the market. Parenting is so full of fears all the time that your kid's going to choke on their food or fall. If your baby's thriving on their formula, there should be no place for any more fear. It just breaks my heart when I hearing the nervousness in some of the questions that I get. So I really hope this is helpful. If you are in a position where your formula is not working, so you're looking for a new one, or you're going to introduce formula for the first time, and so you need information about formulas, that's where I'm hoping this video is helpful. And if that's you, also, mama, get yourself over to my website, because I have an online workshop style course. It's going to take you 2.5 hours to go through. It's broken up into lots of little sections, so you do not need 2.5 hours straight. And you are going to be a baby formula expert when you're done. A total pro. You're going to walk down the formula aisle like a baller and know exactly what you're looking for. And marketing posts from other moms about how this formula changed their baby's life, all that stuff's going to just roll off your back, because you're going to know exactly the science behind what ingredients you're looking for your special and unique baby, who you are the expert on and no one else has cared for. So that's my deepest passion, is helping parents feel empowered in their feeding, and just one less worry to have. And I would love to be able to help you do that. So get over to babyformulaexpert.com and you can find it there. If you guys have questions, pop them in the comments and I will get to them. I see a bunch of questions or comments coming in, so if anyone else wants to hop off, thank you so much. You guys are the best, and I'll see you next time. And I will try to look at some of these questions. Oh, someone's correcting me. So Kendamil must not decades. It's relatively new. The factory has been there for years, but not making Kendamil. Oh, I didn't know that. So I was able to speak with some people from Kendamil, and I know at least the company. The company is decades old. So maybe I'm wrong about how long the formula itself has been on the market, but I know they've been at least in the baby game for a long time. But either way, Shell, thanks. Okay, no. Well. Oh, she's saying there's no evidence the royal family uses this. That's funny. Again, I'm like, meh, you shouldn't use a formula because somebody else is using it anyway. But I have definitely at least seen people on social media saying that, which just goes to show you cannot believe what people say on social media. Agree, real FOMO. Yeah, it's real. Nobody should feel FOMO about feeding their baby. Having a baby during COVID is so hard. There is so many legitimate concerns that you're dealing with as a parent, that FOMO about feeding or missing a product or not using the next best thing is just, it's unacceptable. Your life is too stressful as it is. Your baby needs your snuggles and comfort, and there's just no room for extra worry. Okay. Oh, thanks. And someone else just said a really nice thing to me. Thanks. It's the really sweet things that keep me going. All right. Well, I made it. My baby is still not awake, so I might be able to read a book for 5 minutes. So I'm out of here. Thanks so much, you guys. I really hope this video is better and you can hear everything. I'll talk to you all later. Bye.